Gundam.tk presents High Grade M1 Astray.
Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2Rs2B's Gundam Reviews .net, and today I'm not going to be taking a look at the Master Grade Red Frame, but instead a variant in the form of the M1 Astray in High Grade to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Gundam Seed. Now, let's take a look at the individual parts, which when laid out are going to give you these parts for the body, including some cool looking thrusters there, with weapons and extras including 2 beam sabers there, a very strike-looking shield, anti-ship swords which are looking okay there with the holsters, or the things that you're going to attach them onto the body to go along with an extra attachment point there, a beam rifle, and a couple extra manipulators. Bottom to top, when you take a look at the leg here, you'll see that there's more lining opportunities than I took advantage of here, but then again I figured the minimalist look might just go a little bit better, as the red should stand out more. But in terms of the engineering, if you take a look here, you've got these cool looking parts with the white part going around the side, but not so much around here. This hip part is actually separate, and for the bend, you'll notice that that's only going to give you about a 45, and then you're going to bend that down for about a 135 in total there. Good deep channel there. These parts here, you could add some lining too. The knees are not going to bend or extend or anything, but the red and the white are still going to look good there. You've got the red on the front and on the back there, including these little thrusters that are looking fantastic for a high-grade kit this size. And when you take a look down at the ankles, you'll see that that's on a red part there that's just going to rotate or move back and forth on a polycap, and then you're just going to have this sitting on a polycap. So not as much movement off to the side as you'd expect, but fairly good going front and back. Plain from the front, pretty cool from the back. And it's always just cool to see some new kind of hip designs there, as you've got a polycap on the inside, and then you'll just plug this in, so you're going to make sure that this goes on to the correct leg. To the waist section now, you'll notice that it's going to have very minimal front skirts, and these are actually just one solid piece on here with a red part up there for a little bit of color, which is going to look good. But don't expect any mobility, but you shouldn't need it. You should be able to get an almost full kick out of that, judging on the way the hip mounts are attached on there. For the side skirts, you're going to have them looking football-ish, except you're going to have a little hole there that you can put in the anti-ship swords. And then on the back, you're going to have this big white part here, which is just going to plug in with no color details added onto that whatsoever. And for this waist mechanism, it's just going to rotate a little bit. It's not going to pivot back and forth 00 style. But it's onto the chest where we're getting into more and more of the business end of the quality of this kit being put together. First, you'll notice that there's some red parts there on the inside, and that's going to go through. And what you have over here for the shoulders is actually a small red part here. It's not the same as on the other side. And so you can put that on there, and you're going to have some fantastic looking red shoulders, red neck, red vents, and a red cockpit hatch down there, which is just incredible that they're getting this many color apps in such a small area there. You're also going to have a gray waist section with another part down there that's going to give it some mobility. You can imagine that the polycap too is just going to fit into there. The neck is going to move ever so slightly forward and back, but when you go to the back to look at the thruster assembly here, you're going to be getting the bonus of these gray parts are not done in seals, they're actually done in plastic, which is cool. When you're putting them on, make sure you put the right one on the right side. You got to be careful with that. And on the back, where it seems just to be a little bit dull there, they're actually going to liven it up a little bit with some stickers that fit on fairly well. But then again, it's not going to look as the plastic that's just up above it, but from a distance, you're going to see more color apps than you normally would. When you combine that with the fact that you've got these thrusters down here, this is where it gets just a little bit more disappointing. First, you've got some black on the inside there, so up here you've got gray thrusters, here you've got black, which is looking a little bit dull. Nothing too fancy down here at the bottom there, and nothing fancy up there, of course, at the same time. But when you take a look at this, the biggest disappointment for me, but you're not going to see it because it's on the back, is just that these are seals, and they seem to be just a little bit overdone here. You can guess that they've got to go all the way around, they put one on here, and then you have to bend one over there. So when you combine the fact that you've got all this gray for thrusters, it's pretty cool. It's just too bad that only 2 out of 6 are actually done in plastic. The arms are looking cool, and especially cool from the back, which is a trademark of the Astrays. And if you want to go and decal these up and put some seals on there, you certainly could, and differentiate your team if you wanted to go and buy all 3. So starting with this, you can see that you've got some cool looking thruster vanes back there. You're just going to have this part pop into the polycap there, and you have this little white part there that's going to look good no matter how you rotate the arm around. It's going to look pretty sharp. In terms of the bend, you've got a 90 there, and then you're going to get more, which is nice to see. You're not going to get much more than a 135 though. Over here, you've got an attachment point if you want to put the shield on either arm. Very red forearms here that are still somewhat interesting to put together, and you've got black manipulators with a white cover there, and these ones are the weapon holders. If you're talking about swords, and if you don't want to swap those out, you're going to have a right manipulator there for the BR, and over here an angry closed fist. The beam rifle itself, though, is going to be a little bit plain, but the black color is going to look pretty good with the combined feet, chest, and what you see on the hands for the manipulators there. You can see that it's going to plug in, and you've got another attachment point, I suppose, if you wanted to try to use that. No seals or anything there for the scopes. For the shield on the back, you've got a fair bit of detail there. If you wanted to go and add some lining, you could do all sorts of cool stuff. In the master grade, of course, this kind of thing is going to slide up and down on dual or strike. In this case, it's not going to do anything at all, and it's just molded right into the plastic, although it is a good level of detail there if you wanted to do something with it. Over here, you can see that the eyes, you can go take a look at the bad guys before you pop your head out there and shoot them. And here you've got this part, which is going to rotate around, and you can see where it's going to plug in nicely to the back of the arm, which is going to give you no issues with this on the side. However, where you may not be so impressed is that from a distance I think it looks fantastic, but once you get up closer you're going to see that these red parts are seals, but they actually fit on there very well. So you've got these ones here that are sort of diamondish, and then you've got them there and they can bend down all around, and if you just take a Q-tip or something and run it over the sides, they're actually going to stay down, and they've stayed on pretty well. But over for this one, I had to put this back on kind of thing because it was peeling up, especially at the end, where you can see here that it's expected to cover a little bit more of an interesting area, and it's not quite put on exactly perfectly up at the top, but from a distance it's certainly looking good, and that slightly shiny red on the black and white, and that black being a little bit glossy, it's definitely a nice add-on detail. The anti-ship swords have a little bit of lining opportunities up there with some deep channels and some not so deep channels there that I just went in with some black. However, there's no other marks there down the length of the blade. Here for these parts for the scabbard, you can slide this off. You'll notice that it's a nice smooth motion there. You can put a little bit of lining in there, and of course if you want to paint these up like a pro, you could add a lot more color down here to the hilt and stuff like that. But in terms of this, just a little tiny bit of lining there, and you've got some shallow edges if you wanted to go use that, and this is where it'll attach onto the hip. And from a comparison perspective, you can see here that they're going to have this one being a lot longer than the regular beam sabers, and these are the round variety there with just a very round handle as well. But onto the head, where I think Bandai did a really good job of putting this together, although you may want to just go a few extra steps just to really bring it to life. You've still got those Astray type things on the back there. There's no color back here on the back of the head whatsoever, but you do have good deep lining channels there. Also no camera lenses or anything there. You do have a small green one that's going to fit in there. You've got to be a little bit careful getting that on because it doesn't line up. Like, you can't use the edges to help you line it up. You're going to have to get it in the center on your own. But for the face mask, you've got all the key points because you've got the red under the eyes and you've got the red goatee there. A little bit of black lighting there, and that V-fin is looking just right. But I think the biggest change is that I didn't use anything like seals or anything over here. I just took a black Gundam marker there and you just drew it on kind of thing down the side. Because it's two halves, you don't have to worry about it spilling over onto the back half there. Just paint the front half before you put it on and just put a little bit towards the front, and I thought that that looked better than seals and helps bring it to life, but otherwise it would just be a very white and red head there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's not going to have the kind of details that you'd expect from an Astray. When you lay it out like this, it looks like there's a lot of parts to this, and it's going to be a lot of fun to put together just because it's got those cool thrusters on the back, some good weapons to swap on and off, and those bonuses of the anti-ship swords, which should add a little bit of flair. But overall, just the construction of putting this together, it was a lot of fun to see. 10 years ago, this would have been nowhere near as good, and if you built the high-grade red frame, I'd love to hear from your comments about this compared to that. But just to see the details that go into the limbs and things like that, the way that they use the red and the white, and probably the best part had to be that chest putting it all together. Tons of details that you'd expect on a higher grade, and yet here it is at a very reasonable price in high grade. Anyway, everybody, stick around though, because parts do not a Gundam make, so you can see how this MS is going to look when it's all put together. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. Anti-sword ship, indeed.